Well, it's been a few days since Elon Musk's F-bomb heard around the world that was dropped at the New York Times Dealbook Conference. And while that's getting all the media coverage, largely because of the language that he used and the attitude that Musk displayed during that discussion, there was another point deeper into the interview where he talks about some of the hypocrisy of the companies that are boycotting the X platform. And we here at the channel think it feeds into a larger discussion around DEI, ESG, and some of the pushback those movements are starting to get more frequently and more loudly by a lot of people. We've got some receipts. We're going to dig into it. Come right back and join us. Hey folks, Mark here with The Rational Workforce. Thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate you coming back. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, it's been pretty hard to miss the comments that Elon Musk made during that New York Times Dealbook Conference, where he called out advertisers that are now boycotting the X platform based on a tweet that he had made. He has subsequently apologized for it. But again, you can find no shortage of pundits on YouTube that will break that down for you and give you a recap. What we instead want to focus on is a quote that Musk made a little deeper into that interview, where he appears to be calling out the hypocrisy of those companies that are making a big show and a big display of boycotting the platform on principle, but maybe aren't really walking the walk according to their own self-proclaimed code of ethics. So let's first go to that actual quote and we'll see what Elon has to say.
No, how do I feel about that?
Yeah, no, I'm asking you personally how you feel about that, because we're talking about power and influence, and
I'm saying what I care about is the reality of goodness, not the perception of it. And what I see all over the place is people who care about looking good while doing evil. Fuck them.
Again, Elon is not mincing any words as he covers this. And, you know, if you followed this channel at all since our launch 6-7 months ago, you know, we've covered this topic a lot, right? You know my stance on diversity and inclusion and how important it is for companies to have an employee base that represents the individuals that they're trying to buy into their products or services. So therefore, it should be diverse. The challenge has always been, you can't exclude one group as you try to elevate others. And I think that's where the pendulum has maybe swung a little too far. The other thing is that there are so many companies out there that, in our opinion, really take these performative displays of equity and caring, and we take care of the environment, and we care about all these social groups, and we're going to change our social media icon to the appropriate color or view whenever the month that we're supposed to be celebrating whatever group pops up. That's all over the place, right? That's kind of standard operating procedure in today's businesses. But when it comes right down to it, and you take a look at the actions and activities of these companies, are they really walking the walk? I think based on Elon's comments here, he has a strong opinion about it. We wanted to dig in. We wanted to take a look at some of the companies that are pulling their advertising from X and just do a quick search and see how they stand up about it. So there are several companies. We're going to dig into just a couple of the most noteworthy. And first off, let's start with Disney. All right, so starting with Disney, one of the larger brands that said they're pulling their ads from X. And in that interview, in that same New York Times Dealbook discussion, Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, spoke a little bit earlier in the day. And the interviewer asked them about why they're pulling ads from the X platform. This is what Iger had to say about it. I have a lot of respect for Elon and what he's accomplished, not just, one business, but a few businesses. And we know Elon is larger than life in many respects, and that his name is very much tied to the companies he either founded or he owns, whether it's Tesla or SpaceX or now X. And by him taking the position that he took in quite a public manner, we just felt that the association with that position and Elon Musk and X was not necessarily a positive one for us. And we decided we would pull our advertising. And okay, look, if this truly aligns with Iger's personal views and Disney as a company's views, and they're taking this stand, then you can't fault the guy, right? But I think if you just scratch below the surface a little bit and you take a look at Disney's recent history and specifically its history under Iger's leadership, both the first time he was there and when he came back after outing Bob Chapek, you'll see that maybe there's not a lot of consistency in the principles that he espouses in this particular situation and how they operate as a business. So I'm going to go through a bunch of links, pretty rapid fire. I'm going to put all of them in the comments below. You can hit the articles and read them yourself. But let's take a little stroll through Disney's principled stand on treating people properly and making sure that they're on the right side of these social issues. So first up from the Hollywood Reporter, $100 million Disney settlement signals an end of animators' anti-poaching fight. Essentially, this was Disney, along with several other animation studios, put together a gentleman's agreement that they would not poach talent from each other's company. The detrimental effect there is that if you're not trying to attract away talent from your competitors or from other businesses, it keeps wages kind of artificially capped and artificially low. Doesn't sound like a very positive or employee-friendly business practice to me, but you'll see that it's part of a pattern with this company under Iger's leadership. This was from 2022. Bullying is a problem. Visual effects artists speak out against Marvel. In this article, it covers how both contractors and employees that did the visual effects for these Marvel movies were often overworked, underpaid, hard working environments, frequent changes, long hours, including nights and weekends. And it covers reports of people kind of breaking down in tears as they're at their job. Let's keep going. Disney is a nightmare to work for, longtime cast members say. Now, in Disney's defense, they have been cranking up the hourly pay rate over the past several years to try to keep pace with inflation. But because of that inflation, the actual purchasing power of what they're bringing in, even though it's more in absolute dollar sense, is actually getting them less. Let's hear what some employees have to say. Over half of workers who rent their housing are overcrowded, squeezing too many family members, roommates, or even multiple families into a unit that is too small to accommodate the number of occupants. Disney has become a nightmare to work for. The long hours, lack of livable wages, and zero respect has got to stop, one full-time worker said. 68% of Disneyland Resort cast members are food insecure, and 76% of those with children under the age of 18 are food insecure. After 11 years at the resort, I make $12.02 as my base wage. Why should I drive 30 miles on the 91 and 5 freeways, almost always in heavy traffic, to earn a minimum wage? A full-time merchandise host who has worked at Disneyland for 11 years said. So again, Disney did raise the wages. Kudos to them for making a positive move. But here's another interesting piece. Disney heiress blasts Mouse House over pay inequality in new documentary. So this was one member of the Disney family, along with some other folks, who produced a film that highlighted that while Bob Iger got a pre-pandemic pay package of $65.6 million, look at the article that we just covered, right? A lot of the park employees were working at such a deficit, were getting paid so low that they couldn't even keep the basics going. And, you know, this feeds right into the popular discussions and popular arguments around raising minimum wages across the country. Wherever you stand on that, I respect your opinion, your viewpoint. But this is to highlight that a gentleman who's taking principled stands and trying to look great in front of the press maybe doesn't always put his money where his mouth is. Let's keep going. Here's something that is really interesting around where Disney really stands on human rights issues, or have recently. So this is an article from Vox. It covers the international controversy over Disney's Mulan. And essentially what happened here is they shot Mulan in a province where they also have literal concentration camps for the Uyghur Muslim minority group that is living in China. And in the credits on Mulan, the Disney company actively thanked the leaders of these provinces and the Chinese government for allowing them to shoot there. So Elon Musk makes a really, in his words, dumb statement that was interpreted as anti-Semitic. He has since apologized and explained it away. Iger's pulling the advertising. When it comes to making some money on a movie, they will openly work with an organization in a province that has literal concentration camps. Let's keep going. Star Wars China poster sparks controversy after shrinking John Boyega's character. So you'll notice in the poster on the right, this was part of the American distribution. John Boyega, the great actor that plays Finn, having a much smaller appearance on the poster for our Chinese markets. Maybe it was a fluke. Maybe you can explain it away. A little more recently, Little Mermaid. So you can see the poster on the right was the Little Mermaid poster for our domestic distribution. The one on the left is the one for China. Again, pretty stark difference there in terms of how they're treating their black actors and their black characters. So again, run a search on your own. You can find plenty of examples. I would recommend using non-Google search engines because you'll probably get a little bit more of a clearer view of what's out there. But, again, Disney is not really standing on its principles, in my opinion, based on what Iger had to say. And while they're boycotting advertising on the platform, it's kind of interesting how they're still using the platform. So this is the Disney Plus account. You can see they have a pinned tweet from November 6th, but we're recording this on December 4th. They're still posting content on December 2nd, December 1st. So they're still using the platform to communicate their message. They're just not paying for it. So are they taking a principled stand against X? If so, why are they still using it to communicate with fans? ABC News, another Disney-owned company. This was as recently as 3 hours ago. We'll refresh the page. 4 minutes, 26 minutes, right? Let's take a look at Marvel, another Disney-owned company. Pinned tweet from the 29th. Pinned tweet from the 29th. But if you scroll down, you'll actually see that they are, continually tweeting. This was after they had, made the announcement they were pulling advertising. Let's take a look at ESPN. 4 hours ago, 12 hours ago on December 4th. Still using the platform there. How about Disney proper, just the straight up Disney account? You can see, tweeting back from early November, but here's one from December 1st, right? And how about Disney Animation? They just had their new movie Wish hit the theaters, still using the platform as of December 1st. So again, are you taking a principled stand against the platform and against what, you think Elon believes? Or are you just maybe virtuous signaling and perhaps your background and even your current activity doesn't line up with that? I think that speaks to Elon's quote about doing actual good. All right, that was Disney. Let's take a look at another company. We'll quickly stroll through what Apple has been up to. Okay, let's talk about Apple. Apple, like Disney, is another one of my lifelong favorite brands. And I got to admit, this exercise that I went through for today's episode has been a little disheartening for me as a fan of both companies. But let's quickly go through some of Apple's stands and some of the hot water they've gotten themselves into. So I think we've all heard this story. This is quite old. This is 12 plus years old now, but about the company where the iPhones were assembled and the horrendous working environments there and how they actually had to install netting around the building to prevent people from committing suicide by jumping off the building. I mean, just scary, horrendous stuff. They have ostensibly cleaned up their act quite a bit. I think from a lot of the research I've done, they are making strides in that area, but some of these challenges go way back. Let's look at some of the other issues that they have. This is from 2023, just a couple weeks ago from the recording of this episode. Apple accused of illegally keeping benefits from union workers. Apple Inc. is facing charges from the Federal Labor Board after it excluded unionized retail workers from a benefits boost last year. A National Labor Relations Board regional director lodged a complaint Tuesday based on charges that the tech giant violated federal labor laws by refusing to give unionized workers at an Apple store in Towson, Maryland, enhanced benefits in 2022. Okay, maybe it's just one store, maybe it's a rogue store manager, who knows? Let's take a look at some other stuff. This, again, from November of this year, just a few weeks ago. Ars Technica. Apple discriminated against U.S. citizens in hiring, the Department of Justice says. Apple illegally discriminated against U.S. citizens and other U.S. residents in its hiring and recruitment practices for certain types of positions that went to foreign workers, the U.S. Department of Justice said yesterday. Apple agreed to pay up to $25 million in back pay and civil penalties to settle the DOJ allegations. To get more, this is from 2020. Apple fined for slowing down old iPhones. That doesn't sound very consumer-friendly to me. We look at this article. Apple's App Store again hit over LGBTQ plus app censorship. We know that they are ostensibly huge supporters of the LGBTQ plus community, and that's wonderful. Maybe that's just domestic only. Are they so principled in other geographies where it's a little tougher to take that stance? Well, read this article and judge for yourself. Apple's been called out by digital rights groups for enabling governments around the world to censor LGBTQ content within the App Store, allegedly blocking access to specific apps to appease governments. So this is from June of 2021. And just like we did with Disney, let's take a look and see if Apple is really walking the walk when they are claiming to disconnect themselves from the X platform. Now, here's the Apple account proper. You can see they're not following anyone. They have 9.6 million followers, but there are no tweets, right? No tweets, no replies, no media. Interesting, though, this MacBook Pro image is the brand new one that they just announced at their most recent product launch. So we know they're coming in. They're at least updating this page. But if we look at some of the other Apple-affiliated brands, Apple Books, here's a post from December 1st. Apple Podcasts, here's a post from December 1st. Apple News, here's a podcast from 3 hours ago. So again, are you truly finding there's no value in X and you don't want to support the platform and you want to kick out the plug and make a statement? Or maybe do you find value in it, but you get a couple of extra points by hopping on the bandwagon and joining this ad boycott while still continuing to reap the benefits of the community that X brings together? I think it's a question worth asking. Let's keep going. And lastly, let's take a look at IBM, one of the other mega brands that are part of the X advertising exodus, and see how they hold up to the scrutiny of their beliefs of treating everyone with dignity and respect and not wanting to project an image that goes against their finely tuned corporate branding standards. Take a look at this Los Angeles Times story. This is from last year. IBM emails show millennial workers favored over dino babies. It's a dino baby, you may ask? Well, let's see. In one email change, an IBM official described a plan to accelerate change by inviting the dino babies to leave and turn them into an extinct species, according to the filing. The company officials also complained about IBM's dated maternal workforce that must change and discussed frustration that IBM had a much lower share of millennials in its workforce than a competitor, but said its share would increase following layoffs, according to the filing. Great little phrase here. The communications show a highly incriminating animus against older employees by officials who at the time were in the company's highest ranks. Folks, ageism is still an ism. You can't do it. It's rampant all over, particularly in the technology community. Doesn't get any more clearer example that this is an actual issue than this case that was covered in last year's LA Times. Let's take a look. This is also from 2022. Appeals court affirms that IBM fired a manager for reporting racial discrimination and upholds a multi-million-dollar award. Essentially, what this is about is there was a salesperson who indicated that a black sales rep had his earnings capped while his white counterparts did not have the same cap. Shortly after reporting it, he was terminated, and you can see the appeals court affirmed that manager, his suit was upheld. There were some finer points about some of the payouts that was actually turned over, but for the most part, the $5 million damages still went through, and they were found that original ruling stood. Let's take a look at this. Axe data scientist sues IBM, claiming he was discriminated against as a man. This is FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, the ability to take time off to go care for loved ones. It is a very complex, very sticky area. I covered it a lot when I was in the HR technology community at a company that specialized in this sort of stuff. But essentially, there were women within the company that were granted leave to go care for dependents that he was denied, and there were other elements of his leave policy that he could have taken that he was never made aware of by his manager. Doesn't necessarily mean that this was something that IBM did at the highest levels. Again, it's a very complicated space, and it's very easy for managers to kind of make mistakes here. But again, it's just an example of a company who really wants to take a stand and highlight that, they're for humanity and making sure that everyone feels valued. Couple of examples here that show that maybe they don't walk that walk. So let's do our litmus test on IBM and their participation on X. The last tweet from IBM that we see is November 15th. So it looks like there's been no activity since they decided they're going to stop advertising on the platform. So whether that's by intent or by happenstance, you at least got to give them kudos for not being hypocritical like some of the other folks we showed where they pulled their advertising, but they're still very actively involved on the platform. So there you have it. Just 3 of the brands that are part of the X advertising boycott. And what do you think? Was I fair in my assessment of taking a look at these companies and their past history in terms of how they dealt with employees and how they handled the concerns of marginalized groups? And have those activities been consistent with what you're seeing put out there today? Or let's bring up Elon's quote one more time. Do you think that maybe he's onto something when he talks about what I care about is the reality of goodness, not the perception of it? And what I see all over the place is people who care about looking good while doing evil. You know, I think that there are arguments to be made on either side of it just based on this cursory, non-scientific, just really intellectual curiosity exercise that we just went through in this video. But I want to know what you think. I want to hear what you have to say. Is this something you're experiencing? Do you feel like that a lot of the acts that companies are doing are more performative than actually doing good? Is it just me? Would love to hear what you have to say. Leave your notes in the comments below. Share it with the rest of the viewers. And also, if you get a chance, if you liked what you saw, please ring the bell, click like, click subscribe. Help us keep growing the channel. And with that, we're going to tune out for now. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for viewing, and we will catch up with you soon. Bye-bye.